All right, Tyler Perry fans. Now, this video is just asking a question. This isn't meant to be a Tyler Perry, oh, this is attacking Tyler Perry's skills and writing and whatnot. No, this is just my opinion. Should Tyler Perry just stick with Madea movies? Really, just should Tyler Perry not even bother doing films that don't involve the Madea character? I mean, technically speaking, if he did, like, let's say a Mr. Brown movie or some of his earlier work, like I Could Do Bad All By Myself and Mr. Deeds. Technically, that isn't a Madea film, but it does star Tyler Perry. But let me just get to the point of this video. If you know Dragon Ball, then you know that I am a fan. And Akira Toriyama, I was listening to one of my favorite YouTubers go over some details about the upcoming but still not announced Dragon Ball Super series, kind of like a part 2, if you will, and about how Akira Toriyama, his style of writing from like even the 80s and 70s, I forgot what year he started, but it was a while ago. His style was kind of like the procrastination approach, where he wasn't lazy, but he didn't really think out his stories in advance. He pretty much would just write along, and that's how his stories were formed. And now, of course, he's older, but he doesn't even need to work on the series because he has made his fortune by being a hard worker, working on all kinds of different manga series back in the day, where it was a time where he had to pump out material every single week. And even though like the later seasons of Dragon Ball Z and the Buu saga weren't as good as the Android and Frieza sagas, he had way more creative control. So to me, I kind of compare that to the Viacom network, because Akira Toriyama, and I know this is probably going over people's heads, but hang in there with me, just hang in there. Like during his time during the Buu saga, writing that, based on the success of the Frieza and Android sagas, his higher ups gave him far more creative freedom. And because of that, he was able to kind of just do whatever he wanted. But at the same time, it didn't really involve that same level of quality and direction that the previous arcs did. Like those people up top weren't really hammering him on the head with how things should be done. But at the same time, when you let a person who's creative kind of have free range, that's both a good and bad thing, because it's almost like letting a tiger out of the cage, where they pretty much are able to go wild and there's nobody really there who can reel them back in. So with Tyler Perry, I kind of feel like, the Viacom network is his biggest he's sometimes described that, like Viacom is like a bigger platform where he has more outlets to create more content than the own network would allow. But you also think of the fact that, he's the one ahead of the studio, he's producing, writing, everything and whatnot. So there's really no one, at least to my knowledge, that is there to kind of just say, hey, this is a decent story, but I do think it could be improved, here, here, and here, you see what I mean? Like there's really no editors and whatnot to really make sure there's a good flow within the story. So with Shatter, or Whispers of a Fall from Grace 2. And yes, there is an article from Screen Rant, which honestly I don't really trust him as a reliable source, but it was a pretty well written article, I will say that. So let me just put it this way. I will be doing a video right after this one going over a Fall from Grace sequel movie. But again, I will get into that later. It's just one of those things where I don't want to just say that Tyler Perry is like, hey, Tyler Perry, you should just stick with this one thing and don't do anything else. That's not what I'm here to say. I feel like the people really do want Madea back, because obviously the tour is going well. I believe he's closing out the final dates of the Madea Farewell Tour. If I'm not mistaken, the reason he's doing tour dates now is because he's making up for the tour dates that didn't happen in 2019, if memory serves. But I get it. I think that after looking at obviously after hearing about Akira Toriyama's writing style more, because that's a franchise I love for years and still love to this day, it's kind of like after hearing about what he does and then thinking to how Tyler Perry does things, it actually does make sense because I understand it more. And that's the fact that when a creative person, has something that helps them move forward, they want to do different things. And another Dragon Ball Z reference, Team 4 Star, they do a uh, Dragon Ball Z Abridged series, and they pretty much have announced that they're quitting. They're pretty much, I don't want to just say abandoning, but they've been doing that for 11 years, and they fought an uphill battle against things like copyright. And at the end of the day, they don't want to have burnout. Episode 60 was a great finale. It was a 3-part finale for the Cell arc. And once again, guys, I know some people are like, dude, you keep mentioning anime and Dragon Ball. Where's this going? Let me just say that by getting I guess you could say, a perspective on another show and franchise that I love and why people are stepping away from that, even though it's just a fan redubbing of the original anime, I now really understand why Tyler Perry is the way he is. I'm not saying I agree in terms of like no writers room everything, but I'm just saying that I understand now. They didn't want to experience burnout. They mentioned so many TV shows they have, TV shows that have experienced burnout where the writing team, you could just tell they are just putting out the show for money and whatnot. Kind of like how Nickelodeon ran the Fairly Odd Parents into the ground. SpongeBob is still a marketing behemoth, and I stopped watching. It's like for SpongeBob, I will watch any episode from the first episode, which came out in 99, to around 2006. Like 2006 is where I cut it off. After that, it just got way too weird for me. But I will watch like the first 4 seasons. I believe that's like the span of like the first episode to where I cut it off. But I feel when you put your heart into something, it truly does shine, because it's like hunger. And I remember the Bobby Brown story, when Bobby's brother was chewing him out because he was getting high all the time instead of focusing on his music, because it's like, your Bobby record, the reason it didn't do numbers like Don't Be Cruel is because you're not hungry anymore. You made a success. You got the millions, got the mansions, the cars and whatnot. So you just, effing it up instead of putting your heart, time and attention into the project. So I always say, like, the early episodes of the haves and the have-nots, go back to House of Pain, even some of the early Tyler Perry plays and films. You could tell that those movies and shows and plays, there was a lot of heart into them. That's not to say his newer stuff isn't good, because I know some people are like, hey, Jeremy, man, you really need to watch a couple of these plays that are he put out a few years ago. Because honestly, like, the stack of DVDs next to me on the floor, all the DVDs I give away, like, there are some plays I have not watched. I think I was kind of turned off from Tyler Perry plays once my mom bought the DVD Aunt Bam's Place, and I remember she bought it because we were at Walmart. We went home, watched it, and it was trash. I did not like that play at all. And I remember at the end of the play, when Tyler came out on stage, people were like, hey, why are you still doing plays when you got all the TV shows and whatnot? It's like, well, I just don't want to forget my roots and where I came from, and the plays are what started it all, which is definitely true. But at the same time, if it's not good quality, it's like, I ain't going to watch it. But then again, there have been people saying, hey, you need to watch this play and that play, and I will do that eventually. But given the fact that Tyler Perry has so much success now, and he has free reign, and he has the ability to create so many things, I'm reminded of that inspirational video he did years ago about the importance of focusing on one thing instead of trying to do 50 different things at once. Plant one seed, nourish it, take care of it, water it, take out the weeds and everything that grow around it. And once that thing that you focus on begins to grow, then the rest will come. It's almost like, you try to plant one flower and take care of it, and then eventually, at some point, you'll have a garden. You just really need to focus on one thing. It's like you said, I just wanted one play to work. Before the movies, before the TV shows, I just wanted one play to really take off. And that's what happened for him. So then, as time went on, he had the ability to do so many other things on top of that. So for me, it's almost like, I think when Tyler Perry, had just turned 50 and he was on, what show was it? It was a late night talk show. I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, and he was like, I just turned 50, Madea, I'm going to put her to rest. I don't want to be Medea's age playing Madea, and he has so many other projects he wants to do. He's going to spend more time behind the camera instead of in front of it. So I get it. He's going to do what he's going to do. And regardless as to whether or not I agree with that, I can't fault him for it, because he's worked his butt off. I get it. I mean, once you're tired of something, it's better to just put it to rest as opposed to burnout. But then again, Madea, and I was saying it before, like for me, Madea kind of lost her luster when I was watching movies in like 26, like the Boo movies and whatnot. And for me, I'm like, yo, why is Madea and these characters, why are they telling jokes from these plays that came out in like the early 2000s? Like, this is old for me. And then I realized, well, yeah, maybe I'm not the target audience anymore. And well, the Madea movies still make bank at the box office, regardless of how I feel. There is an audience for it. And that's one thing I really want to, bring home whenever I do have and have not complaints, whenever I say, you know what, I'm not watching Sisters anymore, or I'm not watching this show or that show. At the end of the day, ratings are still high. So at that point, it's like, well, what's the point of me complaining about something if there's an audience? Like Kevin Hart, hey, he's not as funny as he used to be. He has writers and whatnot. Well, regardless as to whether or not you think he's funny, the man is a hard worker. And on top of that, selling out concerts and millions of his bank account. And he's not funny. So, I mean, regardless of him not being funny, something must be working right in his arena. Whereas in the person who's complaining, I don't think they got millions in their bank account. So that's just the way I'm trying to look at it. So I am trying to stay a bit optimistic about, the return of House of Pain, assisted living having Mr. Brown and Cora in it. But when it comes down to the movies, really just talking about A Fall from Grace, what was it? 26 million streams within the first week for a movie that was shot in 5 days. Regardless of all the things that were wrong with the film, I don't think he's stopping anytime soon. So let me put it this way. Should Tyler Perry just stick with Madea films? No, I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't be against Madea being brought back in some capacity. I remember during his like promotional run last year for, what was it? I think it was around the time of the gala, or no, I think it was before it actually. What was it? I forgot what he was doing. Maybe it was for the BET Plus, or was it television? Or was this during the run of the Madea Farewell Tour? I forgot. No. I think it was because of the success of the Madea Farewell Tour, as well as the Madea Family Funeral, which to me is one of my favorite Tyler Perry films. I do feel like a Madea Family Funeral was the one Madea film that changed my mind. I'm like, whoa. The two Boo Madea movies I wasn't really crazy about. And then Nobody's Fool was just like another, okay, you filmed this in 10 days. You really could have did a bit more work on the script and the editing and whatnot. But then he comes out with the banger, A Madea Family Funeral, which he filmed a couple of years before it was actually released. So, yeah, he had it shelved for a couple of years. And finally, a Madea movie where the humor and the story were well balanced. I like the characters. And now you're going to tell me this is how you end it? You just end it? Come on. So I feel like he's just going to keep creating, which, again, is good for him. But at the same time, as a person who saw Tyler Perry, and I don't even want to say at his best, because the fact that I feel like as time goes on, with more experience under his belt, he's able to create bigger and better things. But let me just say, the Tyler Perry I remember from those early Have and Have Not seasons, from the House of Pain era, from his early plays and films, basically when you can tell that hunger was there. And I'm not saying he isn't hungry anymore. Well, technically he's like a billionaire, so I don't think he has to worry about hunger anytime soon. But you know what I mean? It's like he says, the one thing that keeps him successful and really what keeps him working is to continue working like you're broke, which honestly makes sense in terms of how quickly he pumps out stuff, in terms of material. But at the same time, think of it this way. Like, let's say I was working, and I let me just try to think of an example here. Let's say I was working at a newspaper and I had to write articles, and it's like, okay, I need to keep this job in order to, actually afford food and, keep my lights on. So if I have a quota of articles to write for like the magazine or newspaper or whatever, and I just, pump out like 10 articles in a day, but then there's a bunch of, errors in the grammar and the stories don't flow correctly, I could lose my job. But then again, you could make the argument, well, Jeremy, that's because you're working for someone else, whereas Tyler Perry really answers to no one. True. That is very true. So it's like Tyler Perry's kind of making content because he is, but then at the same time, he is allowing actors and whatnot who aren't really getting a lot of big breaks in Hollywood to have their time in front of the screen, which I can't fault him for that as well. But at the same time, guys, it's like I would want to be seen in a movie that is actually getting halfway decent reviews instead of being dragged online. So it's like Crystal Fox has her first time as a main titular character in a movie, but then the movie doesn't really get decent reviews at all, but at the same time it gets 26 million views within the same week. So it's like, well, do you think Crystal Fox will get a bigger role in the future because of the success from A Fall from Grace? I do not know. I hope so, because honestly, I had no problem with Grace as I had no problem with Crystal Fox's acting in this movie, because again, I grew up watching on the heat of the night, and of course, I love her in the haves and the have-nots. So it's just one of those things where, what's that saying? It's like, what I remember watching this on a YouTube video on something yesterday. It was like, doing such and such is like, painting a fence. Do you want it done right, or just do you want it done? So I would like to see, and I hate to use the word effort, but honestly, I would like to see more time and quality put into Tyler Perry projects as opposed to a large quantity of content to take in. Because if, let's say, you drop 5 television shows and I give 2 of them a chance and I don't like them, I'm not really going to be as inclined to watch the other 3 shows. It's kind of like, I compare what Tyler Perry is doing to the James Brown formula of product. Like he just kept pumping out albums over and over again. I remember, what was it called? It was either an episode of TV One's Unsung, because I do believe they did an honorary episode on James Brown, but what was it called? Mike Judd's like Tales from the Tour Bus. I don't know. They didn't come back for season 3 in 2019, and I was mad because I remember loving the episodes on James Brown, Morris Day and the Time, Bootsy Collins, just to name a few off the top of my head. And it talked about how James Brown was just, put out all these albums and everything, and none of them really hit. And what was that? One of my favorite documentaries, The Making of the Rise of Mr. Dynamite. And James Brown was an asshole, but damn if he didn't make some good music. But he would just pump out all these albums, but none of them really had hits. I mean, like there was a time where he would put out dang near 10 albums until one song really even charted. So Prince tried to use that same mentality when he made music, but the record companies kind of restricted him, hence why he came up with the slave thing and everything like that and changed his name. And now you look at the vault and the music that's being released now, and it's like, no wonder he had the vault, because that was way too much music to consume at once. And like a bunch of albums like Emancipation and things like that, albums with like 20 plus songs, that's way too much to consume. So when it comes to Tyler Perry putting out all this content from a YouTuber standpoint, oh hell yes, it's a dream come true. Look at all these shows I have to review. I don't have to worry about running out of material anytime soon. But then I'm also like, do I really want to do videos reviewing like a bunch of mediocre shows when I could just focus on 1 or 2 shows that are really good, like let's say a Queen Sugar, which everyone is telling me to review, or a show like Empire. Yes, I know the show's ending, but I'm just using it as an example. So I'm really conflicted. So that's why I'm doubly upset that Ambitions is off the air, because it got canceled, because like that was a show I really enjoyed watching. Every episode really kept me on the edge of my seat. I'm like, oh dang, things are getting good. Like even when I tried to predict stuff, more often than not, I was either close or I was rarely on target, So I don't think I have the right, despite the freedom of speech and everybody else on YouTube speaking their opinions, I don't think I have the right to say that Tyler Perry should just, hey, just stick to making Madea films. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that, hey, do you, Tyler, you work your ass off to get your studio. You work your ass off to get into the position that you are in to be able to create your content the way you want it. But at the same time, I would recommend, if not a writing team, maybe just some kind of staff to kind of review the the scripts and everything just to make sure it's a good story, because it's amazing, to put out a bunch of television shows and movies in the way you see fit. But at the same time, think of the consumer who pays money to buy the movie ticket or the streaming service fees for BET Plus or the cable bill. It's like, they're taking their money to support your content. And it's not the days of you living out of your car or struggling to make ends meet, and because you put your last few dollars into a venue for a play. You have the resources now, so it's time to really use them to their potential. So you make content that people are going to watch 5, 10, 15 years from now, because like the pains the pains has been forgotten now, because it looks like, and I could be wrong, but based on what I know from what the House of Pain series is going to cover when it returns this year, it doesn't look like the Pains is going to be mentioned at all. It's almost like Pain, and I want to make another reference. It's almost like the Pains will be like Dragon Ball GT. It exists, but it's not connected to the main continuity of the series. So it's just one of those things where I want him to make great movies outlast. Like, I did not know this until recently, but Diary of a Mad Black Woman was not even directed by Tyler Perry. I did not know. I think he was like a co-director or a co-producer, but he was not like the main director. And then it's like, you look at that film, and then you look at a bunch of the films that Tyler Perry does, write, direct, produce all by himself. There's a difference, because there's like a person to kind of, I don't want to say rein him in, but kind of, or even mean this in a rude way, kind of check him. It's like, hey man, let's like do this scene a little differently or whatever. And maybe not do everything in 1 or 2 takes. Let's kind of take our time. But I get it though. In terms of the speed and whatnot, there's the downside and the positive side. On the positive side, I feel like if you are an actor that is able to endure the rigorous boot camp that is Tyler Perry Studios in regards to their filming schedules and whatnot, I think you could be able to make it on almost any other studio set. And that's not to downplay Tyler Perry Studios. I feel like Tyler Perry Studios, if you can make it in that fast-paced environment, when you go to another set, it's like, oh wow, it's like, this is nothing compared to what I went through at Tyler Perry Studios. So it's like, if I can make it there, I can make it anywhere. It's almost like, well, don't they say that about New York, the Big Apple? So I feel like, it does kind of groom people for their next role, their next supporting cast member role or an ensemble role in another studio and whatnot. So if that's the case, then bravo. But at the same time, in terms of me being a consumer of what's being put out of Tyler Perry Studios as opposed to employee, I would like to see more quality. So that involves, more times on the scripts as opposed to writing out an entire season of a show in like 2 weeks and then filming it within, 1 or 2 weeks as well. I just want to see some quality. But that's just me. I want to shut up about it. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think Tyler Perry should just stick with Madea films? Do you think he should continue to make movies that aren't, involving Madea? Do you think Madea's pretty much done for good after his final run of the Madea Farewell Tour? Honestly, I do hope that he puts the play on DVD. Really, I do hope he puts the play on DVD. I will happily buy it and support it and watch it, because I have yet to see it. So with that being said, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Links to my social media are in the description box. If you want to make a donation, there's a link to my PayPal. If you want to join Patreon for Patreon exclusive content, lowest tier is $2, and I post stuff there every week. So thanks so much, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.